You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. In this show, we go beyond the campfire stories to bring you firsthand encounters from people who say they've seen something impossible, from backwoods trails and remote mountain haulers to quiet farms and crowded highways. The stories come from everywhere, and each one leaves us with more questions than answers. These are the voices of the people who've lived it, so settle in, because today you'll hear another account that just might change the way you see the woods forever. So stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to Mike today. Mike is an individual I got connected to about some things he's wanting to share and his own encounter that happened in California. So welcome to the show today, Mike. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you doing?
Doing great. It is always great to talk to people about their Bigfoot encounters, but also, I mean, there's just something about this area. It's a magical area, especially with Bigfoot interactions, as you probably know, being involved with it. But, you know, Mike, I want to make sure that we're able to have the time for you to share the different encounters that you'll be sharing today. So, you know, feel free to take us back to when you had this experience and what was happening at that time.
The first encounter I had was in Southern California. I grew up as in high school. I will say Riverside, California, and about 17 years old, a couple of friends and I had ditched school and wanted to go up in the mountains and just explore and go on a hike and such. And it was 1987. And it was in the Lake Arrowhead region. I don't know if you know or familiar with that region. It's up in the mountains. And we went up there and we were just driving around. My friend was driving. And he just pulled over on a turnout. And we got out of the car and just started walking around. We found a trail, and all of a sudden, it was right there. There was a UCLA cabin, like UCLA camp sign. And there was all these cabins that were like log cabins that were vacant. It was in October, late October, so it was cold and there was no one around at all. And so we just started walking down a trail, and my buddies were pranksters, so they took off, and next thing I know, I'm alone. They took off from each other, and so I just kept walking around this camp, and it was probably like a half an hour later. I'm trying to find them. I couldn't find them for a little while, and I heard some noises and didn't think anything of it. Kind of just movement noises in the woods. And I came around one cabin, and I saw movement, and I looked, because it was about like 3:30 in the afternoon in October, so there were some shadows going on, but I could see pretty well. So maybe 50 yards away and maybe 10 feet in from that, so there was trees, but I saw something standing up and took off really pretty quick. And I didn't hear it take off. I heard noises before that. I didn't hear it take off, but it was upright and brown, like a dark brown. Immediately I thought there's a bear out here, like everyone would think. But, right away in my mind, I'm like, this thing was walking. So, of course, I wanted to really find my friends at that point. So I turned around and walked back to the car. That's the only thing I could think of. Where they'd probably be back there by now, maybe. I don't know. And I got out of there quick. So I got back, and I asked them if they saw anything, and they both said no, they didn't see anything. I didn't tell them what I saw. I said, do you think there's bears out here? And they're like, oh, possibly. That's all I said. I was scared. I kind of wanted to leave. I kind of calmed down. I was like, oh, it must have been a bear in my head. I'm just going to convince myself it was a bear, whatever. But in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, I know it was upright, but I'm with my friends. It took off. I'm fine. Going back further than that, I grew up in the 70s. My first experience with Bigfoot was The Legend of Boggy Creek, like a lot of people my age. And my first book that I read about it was probably in 6th grade. So that would have been like, 78 or something. So quite a long time ago. So I definitely was interested in the subject. So going forward back to the situation, we stayed there until it got dark, and we were all hanging out in the van, just talking, and we heard footsteps, and they were loud. And I remember screaming, "Bigfoot!" and getting down in the car, all kind of scared, right? And my other friend did too. My other friend that was driving, he just laughed, whatever. But he heard it. And we all got quiet, trying to hear whatever we could. We had the lights on in the van, and he turned the lights off real quick, and we just waited there for like maybe 10, 15 minutes and started whispering like, we don't hear anything. It must have been 20 minutes later. We opened the van up and take the flashlight and went outside, and we were there was a picnic bench there, and there wasn't anything. And then a big family of raccoons came up, and we're like, that couldn't have been raccoons. We're scratching our head like, what the heck was that? But I was pretty convinced that maybe that was Bigfoot. I'm like, well, maybe it was a person, but I mean, it was so loud. So I had this racing going in my mind. We got to get out of here. It's late. I got to go home. And we made it home, by like 7, 8 o'clock. It was dark. So that was my first encounter, I think, that really got me. I mean, I was already into it, but really got me going, thinking that there's a good possibility that this is happening to people, having sightings. The next experience that I had was in 1988. And out of all places, it was in Lake Havasu, Nevada. I have gone on the map and looked for, any sightings there. There really isn't any. There's maybe one kind of close to there. And there is, a desert Sasquatch that has been reported on the border of California and Nevada, and then going west into, Palm Springs area and such. But this was, kind of farther away from that. It was right on the river of Lake Havasu. I guess that's the Colorado River. And I was with a group of 10 friends, and we were camping. We had driven out there as a group, and it was probably 2:33 in the morning. There, it was in the middle of summer. There was no one there, not a soul anywhere. The whole campground was dead. We covered the grounds. No cars came in or out. And my friend and I went for just a brief hike around the campground at 3 in the morning. We weren't sleeping. And the Milky Way was out. It was the most incredible Milky Way experience I've ever had. There's no lights out there, so it was incredible. It lit up the sky, the sky like the moon would. And I remember we were up on this hill, this little kind of hill, and we're like, let's go back to camp. And we're going back a different way than we came, right on the lake. And so we started going on this trail, and there's this, how can you explain it? It's there's trees growing from the left, trees growing from the right, or maybe brush. And it was probably like 15, 20 feet tall, and they kind of met in the middle. So it was like a tunnel. And you could see the light come a little bit coming through the tunnel on the back end. And we both kind of stopped about 30, 50 feet from it. And we looked at each other and said, okay, well, it's kind of dark in there. And we didn't have flashlights. We were all going by the Milky Way. I mean, you could see pretty well. And All of a sudden we hear noise. We look at, we're like, I don't know. And all of a sudden something starts running at us very quickly. Like unbelievably quickly. We turned around and ran up that hill, went all the way to camp, did not stop. And we were in shape. You know, I was, 18 at the time. You know, I played football and track in high school. So I was back at camp pretty quick. But this thing was right on us, whatever it was. I thought, right at first, I thought it was a human, but it was black. It was all black. And it was like a shadow person coming out, and you could hear the footsteps. And we got back to camp, and we're like, it had to be one of our friends, you know, pranking us, right? They were all sitting by the campfire. And we, you know, were adamant, like, somebody's out there, you know, what's good. They didn't even bat an eye. They were just like, whatever. But it could not have been a person. So I don't know what it was, but, you know, with my brain, I'm thinking what I saw the year before, I'm thinking, you know, it had to be that, because what else would it have been? You know, a track star out there? Maybe. I mean, it was something very, very fast. Excuse me. And so that was that event. In 1992, you know, I traveled the country quite a bit in that time frame. 1990 through 1995, I traveled all over the country many times, and I was in Eugene, Oregon, and there was about 8 of our friends there. We're in a house, and my friend's girlfriend's dad lived there, and he was coming over because she was in town, and he was a logger. Well. He came over. He was about 6'5" and is a burly man, rugged, tough guy. And, of course, with the experiences I had, I asked him outright, has he had any experience with Bigfoot? And all my friends laughed. And some of them shook their head, like, why are you asking this guy this? And he just looked at me straight in the eyes and said, yes. And my friends stopped laughing. I said, well, that's interesting. What happened? And he said that, over his years, he was probably like 60 at the time. He's had his equipment messed with, and he's seen the footprints. So that was really, really interesting to me. Kind of gave me a little bit of validation, and also just talking to somebody else that has had an experience was interesting to me as well. I mean, I was probably 22 at the time, somewhere around there. I kept up my reading of books and trying to get a hold of anything I could on Bigfoot at that point. I was really kind of going deep on it. I read Dr. John Bindernagel's books and Grover Krantz. I read a book by him. And watching anything that was on TV, which, TV sensationalized. But there's Monster Quest, I think, is what was going on at that time. I think it was 1993, my brother and his wife came up to visit me. I live in Sonoma County now, and they're from Southern California. And we got to talking about camping, and they both blurted out, we're never going camping again. And I said, why? So my wife and I, his wife and him, we're all sitting there talking at dinner, and they were both kind of shaken when they were talking about this. They're like, well, we had an experience at Pfeiffer State Park in Big Sur last year, so that would have been 1992, that we can't explain, and scared us, and we're never, and they, you know what, they have never gone camping since, still to this day. They have never gone. So their story is they didn't have, this is pre-kids. They have 2 now, and they're all grown up, but they went camping at the state park in Pfeiffer's Beach, and they slept on the beach in a tent, and and then they had a cliff on one side that was non-scalable. You can't scale the cliff. It was, I don't know, 60, 70 feet high, I don't know, straight down. And so, they woke up to like little pebbles coming down the wall, like somebody was coming down it. And they just were standing up the wide-eyed going, oh my gosh, they could hear some things actually, because they were chatting together. They were talking in a different language, and it sounded like they sounded like they were small, and they were talking and chatting, kind of whisper chatting, but he couldn't make out what they were saying because it was in some kind of different language. And that went on for hours. And then finally, whenever they got to the very bottom, like 4 a.m, they got to right back at the base of their tent, it went silent. Nothing. They couldn't hear anything walk off. They didn't hear anything. He opened up the tent and looked, nothing was there. The sun came up, they packed their bags, and they were done camping, I guess for life, because they've never gone back. So yeah, I've talked to him, many times since, and his story is the same. But he doesn't think it's Bigfoot. He does not. He's a scientist, and he's one in the skeptic camp. He didn't know. He still to this day doesn't know what it was. He doesn't claim to know what it was, but especially now since I've listened to Sasquatch Chronicles, and I don't know if you have, Jeremiah, episode 515.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, when that episode, So when that episode first was played, the hairs rose up off my neck because it instantly reminded me of my brother, because that was the same park, and I'm almost certain it was the same beach that happened. So, I found that really interesting. I have friends that live down there. There's a few stories here and there, but they have never seen anything. I think probably it's maybe a migration or a path, an area where they go through. I'm not sure. I just kind of think it may be because there's not a lot of sightings down there, but there's not a lot of people either. So who knows? And then as far as experiences that I've talked to people about, there was one more. Well, there's two more. There's one more in 2002. One of my it was easy acquaintance, from elementary school. My kids went to school with their kids, and they became friends. And so we became friends. They were on the same softball team, and so on and so forth. So we would do things outside of school and work. And we went camping. And I don't know how probably it was me brought up the Bigfoot. Because they were talking scary stories, and I think one of my friends was like, "Yeah, tell a story about Bigfoot." And so I did, and then the discussion became about Bigfoot. His wife and I kind of went at it. She's a total skeptic, but he said, "Yeah, my dad is really into Bigfoot, and his dad's retired, straight shooter, and he said that." So his story goes that he was in the Minnesota forest hunting. So he's a hunter, deer hunting. And he was parked in his truck. And so he has a cab over, Ford F-250. It's a big truck. And he sleeps in the back. Well, he was sleeping in the back in early 2000s. And it was in the middle of the night, 2, 3 in the morning. Something picked his truck up 5 feet off the ground and then dropped it. That's a heavy truck. And even if you had 5 men doing that, you would hear them. And first of all, second of all, it would probably not get picked up all in one, whatever picked it up, he said, it picked it up and just dropped it like it was nothing, like a toy. And then nothing. So, his mind went to Bigfoot as well. I mean, what else? What would you think it would be, right? Your mind goes through all these things, and it's like, well, a bear's not going to do that. People, it would take maybe even the strongest man in the world, he might be able to do it. I mean, that's a heavy vehicle, and it's high off the ground. So his mind went to Bigfoot, and he's been, interested in Bigfoot ever since. He goes out camping, and he still goes and hunts, and he's on the lookout for any signs and what have you. So I thought that one was really interesting as well. And the last one that I have is my wife. She spent a good 7 years in Tahoe, Lake Tahoe, in Tahoe City. And one of her friends there has a Bigfoot story that he was driving home in the winter when it was snowing. And so he was driving home on the West Shore. So it was coming from Tahoe City down to Homewood. And he was going pretty slow because it was snowing pretty good. But he clearly saw it. It was upright. It was brown, and it was a Bigfoot, and it smacked his car as he went by, going about 20 miles an hour. And we talked about that with not just my wife, but a bunch of friends that know the guy, and they were all, yeah, that's what he says happened. And, a bunch of them were skeptics and and laughed about it. And I was kind of shaking my head up and down saying, well, that probably did happen. It's because, I've gone and looked at all the sightings that are in South Lake Tahoe. It's kind of been quiet the last few years, but a good 15 years ago, there was quite a bit of sightings there. So, that's about all I have with this first and second sightings, secondhand sightings that I have.
It's some really incredible stuff. I don't doubt that the story with the truck being lifted up, I don't doubt it at all, because you do hear that through history. And then I've also had an individual tell me a story about a mushroom hunter in the Olympic Peninsula that I believe he was sleeping in his truck, and it actually got picked up, and then it was put upside down with him in it. And he was so horrified that he said, forget this, I'm leaving my truck. Like, just left it, never went back for it. So I don't doubt that story for a second. Now, having these interactions as a younger individual, how did that affect the rest of your life? Did you ever go out looking for it yourself, or did you just get really involved with stories and talking to people about it?
Well, I was really adventurous when I was young, in my 20s. So at that period of time, 87 to like 95, I was hiking all over the place. Like I said, I was all over the United States. So I was on a lot of trails, all over Washington, Oregon, a lot of Eugene area, in Southern Oregon, Grants Pass, Northern California. And I did forget one other one, but everything becomes subjective when you don't see something, I guess, there's a lot of, I don't know what classification, class B, I guess, sightings you'd say, where you hear scream or you see stick formation or all that kind of thing. But mine was in my bus. So another story, but it's a little subjective because I didn't see it, but or it could have been a person. But I was up camping in October. It was about October 25th. It was pouring rain, freezing pouring rain, mind you, and it was like about 2 miles south of Arcata and a few miles north of Clam Beach. I was right on the cliffs of the ocean. There was a beach down there. And I was driving back slowly, down back to where I live in the North Bay, down to the Bay Area. And it was about 12:30 at night, and my dog's hair on his back is up, and it's just growling really quietly. And so I'm hearing the rain, but I'm hearing footsteps walk around the bus. I had a VW bus. And I was nerve-wracked. I was scared because, I'm like, well, what? I thought bear at first, there's plenty of bear up there. But it was circling the bus, and it did it a couple times. And I, from my previous experiences, and I was already interested in it, I'm like thinking, well, maybe it was a Bigfoot. Who in the heck would be out here? I mean, at that point, there was no houses in that area. Now there are. I've looked at, Google Maps, just curious to find the beach again and look and see what's developed in that area. So there are houses like on the east side, there's the highway, one, and then there's like houses on the hills, on the trees. But and another interesting thing about that, because I had people that were living in Arcata, and they come down and stop for the day at that beach, and people were saying right next door there's these woods, and they said no one will camp there. I'm like, why? Because they call it the ghost woods. I'm like, what? And then later I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, I wonder if it's because things are happening, that they can't explain. So, like I said, it's subjector, and you can't prove anything by hearing something walk around your bus. But I definitely had my suspicions that if somebody's walking around my bus at 12:30 at night in freezing rain in October, they're crazy. I mean, just nuts. But there's nuts. People are nuts out there. So.
Well, true. Yeah. I mean, everywhere, but certain places more so. But Did you see any tracks the next morning?
No. And so, getting back to what you were saying about searching for him, I never really went, Bigfoot huntings per se, but I always had my eyes and ears open for any sign whatsoever. I used to own property up in Laytonville area, and I always had my head on a swivel, for anything that was happening. And, even on my property, I had to far in the property is 25 acres. It was really dense forest and rugged. And there was some trees that didn't look right, but at the same time, I took pictures of time. It's on an old phone. It's gone. But, I don't know. But when you have these experiences and you have other people tell you about their experiences, and then when you dive in deeper to the subject and you realize that there's something to it, and then you talk to people like I've had a conversation with Cliff Brockman, I've had a conversation with Dr. Meldrum, and I've gone to their lectures. And you really dive in deep to the evidence that's there. I mean, trace evidence in court can put you in jail for life for murder, right? But they won't use, and they use it for discovering humans from 100,000 years ago, but they won't put it to Bigfoot. And these prints are way more clarity. There's dermal ridges, there's push-offs off of hills that you can't do with any kind of pneumatic mechanism. So they want a body, I get it, but the evidence is glaring right at you. It's just that, people can't put their minds around to believing it, because seeing is believing, right? To a lot of people anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, there was... last month, I was able to go out in Clackamas County with an individual, and we found like handprints out there, and they're massive, absolutely massive. Like if you've ever seen the Paul Freeman ones, they're that size, like huge. It just blew my mind. I mean, Clackamas County in Oregon is absolutely insanity. You mentioned that you went out a lot in the area around Eugene. Were you going out in the towns around Eugene then, out in the woods or anything like that? Or
there's some great hiking out in Cougar Falls area. That's about 20 miles east of Eugene, and east of Springfield. Very mountainous. I think what river is that? The river goes, I haven't been there in a while. There's a river that goes along the highway there, and it's very wooded. And Cougar Falls is absolutely gorgeous. It's beautiful. There's a little lake with a waterfall, and then there's hot springs. And there's a lot of hiking around in that area. And then east of Eugene as well. I've done a lot of hiking. And east of Portland and in Seattle. So, and then as far as going up there, west of Seattle, that's a pretty good hot spot, but I never did see anything. I always had and actually I had camped in some remote areas in West Oregon as well, close to the beach, very wooded. Still didn't see any, like I said, whenever I go camping, I keep my ears and eyes open, especially now. Oh, I have one more story.
All right.
I have I almost said his name, but my really good friend, he, I talked to him in lengths about Bigfoot, and he went camping, McLeod area, at this RV campground in McLeod, and it was end of September, just starting to get kind of cold, and there was nobody there except for the hosts. They lived there, and he had his little dog. It doesn't matter what kind, French bulldog or something, and so he was camping, and he had a fire going, and he went into his tent, and he was falling asleep. It was, who knows what time, I don't think he knew what time it was, but he woke up to something kind of playing in the fire. And he's like, who in the heck would be playing in the fire? And whatever it was sounded upset. Like it was making noises that sounded upset. And then it cleared its throat. And he's like, it did not sound human, but it sounded like a woman. I thought that was really interesting because it was taking logs, like it was like trying to put it out. Yeah. And he told me that story, and he was another thing about this is they put him in the very, very corner right next to the woods, as far away as you can get sight. So that was interesting, I thought, because again, who's going to be doing that, It could have been the campground host, maybe, but he said it didn't sound right.
Absolutely. I mean, you take into consideration where it is, too. I mean, that's McLeod, California, right?
Correct.
So that's in the shadow of Mount Shasta, which is also next to, Dunsmuir, Weed, Eureka, all these places in that area. In Mount Shasta itself, a lot of activity over the years, and definitely current days as well. So, I mean, yeah, that's some pretty weird stuff, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been wanting to get myself out into the woods, but my kids and work and, everything, and, I just got done with college, so that all got, is taking a lot of my time. Plus, I broke my back last year in a car accident, so I can't hike very far anymore. Hopefully I can get through it and get back to where I was, but glamping's my style right now anyway.
Gotcha. I hope I wish you the best with that recovery. I know that can be a long road.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it. But you can still get some activity from if you take your RV out anytime after October and do some winter camping. There's nobody, in some of these campgrounds. And from what I've been reading and hearing on some of the podcasts, that people are having experiences, even just having them come to you. So
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And they'll mess with your RV. I mean, I've heard of that more than once. I'm thinking of the area around Eugene, east of it. Dexter and Lowell and Oak Ridge. I've gotten many reports in that area of RVs just being swatted around like flies when there's people in there. You mentioned Cougar Falls, right?
Right.
Is that up by Rainbow, Oregon?
I have to look at a map real quick.
Yeah, just east, and it's like you're going up to the pass, right?
Well, if you go into Eugene, here, let me, Cougar Hot Springs. Yeah, it's Blue River.
Yep.
Yeah. Right by the Cougar Reservoir. So you would take the 126 east. So you're going to go by Walterville, Leeburg, Vita, and Blue River. Yes. Yeah. And it's right up in there. Beautiful area right next to the reservoir. And I've had, back when I was going there, people were saying different stories, they've heard things, but I just I never got any, definitive story told to me that this, my friend, blah, blah, blah. So who knows? But it's definitely a place where I could see activity happening. The Willamette National Forest is right there.
Oh, it's so crazy. I drove through it about a month ago in July when I was out there in Oak Ridge, and I mean it's just a weird area. Once I drove past, I don't know if you remember Finn Rock, that rock that's like the road splits it. It's huge. The vibes are weird when you drive through that Rainbow and McKinsey Bridge area. You've heard so many things and you've experienced some things yourself. Do you have any leanings either way about what you think it is that we might be dealing with, whether it's something maybe more human related or ape related, perhaps?
This is the very question that I talked to Dr. Meldrum about, and and why didn't gorillas in particular, or chimpanzees, why didn't they evolve like we did? Why didn't they, and in particular, if Bigfoot is an omnivore, which is what we think they are, because they have been seen stealing chickens, they carry deer, this type of thing. Why didn't the brain evolve like ours did? Because, brains, complex brains need a lot of protein. And he had a great answer, which I can't exactly recall. But yeah. So I thought that was very interesting. But I think, as we find more and more fossils, and which are really hard to find nowadays, a lot of skeptics are saying, oh, well, why don't we have a body? Why don't we have, fossil evidence? Well, back 40 years ago, the evolutionary tree for humans was a lot, Denisovans weren't discovered yet. And we're finding more and more pieces of that tree and discovering that, there wasn't only 4. Now there's, there could have been 25 different upright walking apes that contributed to a human species. So that's what I think that it is. I think it's one of the branches, and just like anything else, a gorilla, a chimpanzee, they have branches before them. I think it's another hominid, possibly. I believe that they're smart, but I don't think that they're humans. They don't have this capability that we do as far as being as smart as us. I think that they are an adaptation to their environment. They are very, very highly adapted to their environment. But There's a guy, Matt Pruitt. I don't know if you know of him.
Oh yeah, Matt's great. Yeah, we've talked before.
Yeah. His latest book was really interesting. He talks about how, in different cultures, let's say, in India and China, they had all these different beliefs that tigers had magic powers, and for thousands of years. And the reason why is because they are so adapted to their environment, and they are so quick, and they're so powerful, and so there was so much mystery to them. I think the same thing's happening with Bigfoot. I think that they're so rare, and they are intelligent enough to be able to evade us. They stay away from us. They know how to hide. They know how to lay down on the ground and be quiet for. Heck, they can out quiet you and outpatient you for an hour. You think it's gone, it's still there. That's my belief. I really do think that they have stealth qualities. They can be quiet as a mouse, even though they weigh 800 pounds. So, I think that's my nutshell of it. I think that they're a hominid or an ape, that's very adapted to their environment, very quick, and smart for an ape. Yes.
Interesting thoughts. Thank you for sharing those. I also, before I forget, thank you for sharing your original, encounters. And that area is not the first time that Crestline Arrowhead has come up on the show before. We've had another individual speak about how she really went through some interesting things at a house in that area. That's episode 807 in the Crestline Arrowhead area. But yeah, once I heard you say that, I was like, oh man, yeah, we've been here before. But that whole area is pretty wild, and I believe Eli Watson covers the Southern California area in his Southern California documentary series for Small Town Monsters on Bigfoot. But I just wanted to say, thank you so much for coming on today. It has been fun talking to you, Mike, and thank you for sharing everything that you've experienced and heard over the years.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I appreciate what you're doing. I love listening to all the experiences, and it helps me process my own. So, appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Every encounter we share reminds us that the world is bigger and stranger than we think, and that the truth is often hiding just beyond the tree line. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode, and share this with a friend who's into mysteries, monsters, or the unexplained. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please follow the show there and leave us a 5-star positive review, because all that helps more people discover the show. And remember, if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot sighting, please, I'd love to hear from you. So email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com and let's start the conversation. If you haven't gotten a chance yet, check out our membership community over at www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com. And that's where you can hear tomorrow's episode today, early and ad-free, and members-only episodes every week. Also, it's a place to connect with other people that are into the Bigfoot subject as much as you are. Thanks again for following along with the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there. And see you in the woods.